In 20 years as a dating coach and having worked with thousands of clients, it may surprise you to hear that I mainly just get two types of clients. First of all, obviously, I get guys who simply are not having success with women at all. That's pretty obvious, you would expect that. But the second type of guy I get a ton of are guys who actually are having success with women, just not the women they're really into. They can get okay women, even cute women, but they're not getting the women who are out of their league. They're not getting the women who really excite them. In this video, I'm going to talk about why that happens and how you can get the women you really want. Let me start off this video by saying I'm incredibly blessed to have such an amazing audience. Of my subscribers and viewers, so many of you are intelligent, successful, educated, motivated, determined people who are into self-improvement, and that leads to certain things. It leads to you on average being in the gym more, and it leads to you on average looking better, and on average having a good job, and on average being in good places. And if you do those things, on average, you are going to get more women than average. You're going to get some women just from being in the right place at the right time, at least as compared to the majority of men. But if all you do is be a high value guy in general, you are going to be limited. You'll be limited to the women who come into direct contact with you for long enough to realize your high value. And so you may meet some women, again, more than the average guy, which is a pathetically small amount, but you won't meet as many as you maybe would like. If in addition to being a high value guy, you're willing to do an occasional cold approach, which again, I'm blessed that a lot of my subscribers actually do, and more of you should. If you're willing to do a cold approach and actually occasionally tell a girl you're interested in her, well, now that number of women who are exposed to your high value will go up considerably, and now you'll probably have an abundance of women. However, there's a problem. When you tell a girl you're interested in her, you are subtly increasing her value relative to yours. And also, in the world at large, it's just a normal thing that men tend to be pursuing women for sex more than women are pursuing men for sex, at least overtly. So all of these three factors mean that if you are going out and approaching women with the desire to meet them and date them, you're automatically going to be coming from a perceived lower value relative to the woman. And so it shouldn't be a surprise that the girls who like you and see you as higher value, in spite of that perceived value gap, are the girls who are just slightly lower value than you are. To put this in concrete terms, let's say you're a guy whose perceived social value would be like an 8 or an 8.5. If a girl is, say, a 7 or a 7.5, and you go up to her and tell her you like her, she's probably going to be thrilled and she's going to want that interaction. If your perceived value is an 8 or an 8.5, and you go up to a girl whose perceived value is a 9 and you say, hey, I like you, she's going to be like, well, thank you, I'm flattered, but I'm not really interested. This same phenomenon works all the way down the scale. If you are a 7, you're talking 6s and 6.5s, etc. And the techniques I'm going to talk about in this video will help you to attract 9s and 10s, even if you are well below that standard yourself. So this applies to everybody. There's one idea I need you to understand, and that is the distinction between what I call superficial value and real value. Superficial value is the value that is readily apparent to an outsider who doesn't know anything about you as a person. Real value is what develops more and more the longer someone interacts with you. So people who would have high superficial value would be attractive women and also celebrities or people who are popular in a particular environment or situation. Real value would have a lot more to do with the actual facts of your life and the actual experience of interacting with you. Now, it's impossible for someone to know your real value before they get to know you, so you have to deal in superficial value at least at the very start of the interaction. And unfortunately, hot women tend to have some of the highest superficial value in the world, which is the main problem for a lot of guys. But you're actually in luck, because as soon as you start interacting with a girl, you can start conveying both social value and real value within the interaction. And there's also a bit of leeway. Because two individuals don't know each other right away, there's a little bit of sort of wiggle room of superficial value for who you can interact with. So let's say that you are someone who thinks of yourself as an 8 or an 8.5, and someone comes up to you and you see them as like a 7 or a 7.5, but you don't know for sure. Firstly, politeness dictates that you not just be an outright asshole. But also, there's a chance that when you see someone who you perceive to be a point or even 2 points below you, you don't know them well, and you know that. So there is a chance that they are something you don't know. There's a chance they have some value you're not aware about, so you will give them a short window of your attention in order to develop who they are. And that, as a man, thankfully, is all you really need. But it's important that as soon as you get that window of attention from a really hot girl with high superficial value, It's important from that first moment that you start to stand out. It's important you start to set yourself apart from all the other guys. You have to do something to get her attention and get on her radar. So this is where game comes in. This is where you have a use for all those fun techniques you've seen throughout my channel. You may have heard of things like disqualifiers, teases, push-pulls, negs, these types of things. These are value adjusters. You see, typically, when a man meets a girl he finds attractive, he starts showering her with compliments, trying to be really polite, trying to be really nice, trying to be inoffensive. And that makes the girl think that he is just the next typical guy who is below her value. However, when you say or do something that surprises a girl, or when you show a willingness to walk away or to break rapport, to not be nice and kiss her ass, she sits up and takes notice because this is unusual. And it's also how people who are higher value than her have treated her. Typically, guys who perceive themselves as lower value than her are trying to be nice. They're trying to seek rapport. They're playing not to lose. They're hoping that she will like them. Typically, guys who are higher value and don't really need anything from her are willing to break rapport. They're willing to call her on her bullshit. They're willing to say what's really on their mind and not censor themselves. And so when you do this, you're putting yourself in that category. But the other thing these value adjusters do is they make a direct statement about the relationship between you and her. If you say to a girl, you and I would not get along, you're saying that there's a relationship potentially between us and I don't necessarily want that relationship and I'm the decider in this process. Those are some very strong statements for a hot girl who's used to having her ass kissed by every guy. So this non-neediness, willingness to walk away, and use of these value adjusters can be absolutely critical in getting on this hot girl's radar and getting her attention in the first place. But unfortunately, that's only a start because you can't keep doing these throughout the entire interaction. It would be socially weird to keep being like, I hate you, fuck off, walk away, I hate you, I don't like you, go away, hands off the merchandise. You can only do that so long. At some point, if you want to connect with a girl, you've got to actually connect rather than just push her away all the time. And this is the second place where guys mess up. Say they learn a couple lines, they learn a couple teases, they get on the girl's radar, and then they start connecting with the girl. Well, the next thing they do is they lose her attention as soon as they start connecting. As soon as they start being nice, as soon as they start opening up, as soon as they start getting to know the girl, they become that typical boring guy all over again. So how can you stay that non-needy, high-value, abundant guy as you are getting to know the girl and showing some interest in her? Well, here's the next secret. It's what I call the buyer-seller dynamic, and it goes like this. In every interaction, there's one person who needs the other person more, or there's one person who needs something from the other person to a greater degree. And that person is typically selling themselves. The other person is the buyer and the chooser. They're the one who makes the decision. So think of a typical sales scenario. If you are on a car lot and someone is trying to sell you a car, they have the agenda of selling you a car and you have all the choice. You have all the power in the situation to say no, to walk away, to go onto another lot and buy a car from someone else. Similarly, when you meet a hot girl, if you have the willingness to walk away, if you have the willingness to have standards and hold her to those standards, now you're starting to assume some of that buyer power. You're putting her in a situation to sell herself to you. Further, if you challenge her value or qualify her on the things that she has going for herself besides her appearance, for example, you're taking on a role of someone who is interested but not sold. And that is the critical phrase I want you to have. Interested but not sold. See, there's this misconception that if you walked up to a girl, you've given away all your power because clearly you walked up to her, you decided on her, you chose her. Well, you did choose her to talk to, but you didn't choose her to date, you didn't choose her to marry, didn't choose her to have kids with, you didn't choose her to commit your financial resources to. You just chose her as a potential someone to talk to. It's kind of like if you had a company who call someone in for an interview. You chose them as someone you were willing to spend half an hour interviewing with. You did not choose them as a potential future employee. At least not yet. They have to sell themselves. But how do you do this? How do you create this buyer-seller dynamic? Well, the first thing is to not become the seller. Don't start selling yourself. Don't start qualifying yourself. Don't start trying to prove yourself. Your inherent assumption should be, I am enough. Of course you like me. Women like me. I'm bringing a lot of value to this interaction. Now, of course, those aren't things you say. These are things that are in your mind. These are things you understand to be true. And by understanding them to be true, the words and actions are going to reflect them. Imagine for a minute if growing up, every single girl you ran into was trying to date you, trying to spend more time with you, trying to get you away from your current girlfriend, and that was your life and that was your reality. you'd be very flattered by it. You'd be very confident in your attractiveness as a man, and you would think of women as fun, silly people who show way too much interest in you, and that's just the normal order of things. Now, for most of us, that wasn't our life growing up, but imagine if it was. Put yourself in those shoes and act as if, because you know what? The girl you're meeting has no way of knowing whether or not that was the way you grew up. If you act that way, you're going to convey that way, and she's going to start to assume that way to a certain extent. So rule number one, if you want her to sell herself to you, don't start selling yourself to her. Assume some level of value. Beyond that, start taking her off of her pedestal. There are a lot of times when it comes to attractive women that men let them get away with all kinds of things they wouldn't let other people get away with. There are all kinds of things that if a normal person did it, you'd call them out as rude or full of shit, or you'd tease them on it. But with hot girls, most guys just let it slide because they don't want to mess it up. No. Step number one, treat her the same way you treat everyone else. If she deserves to be teased, tease her. If she deserves to be questioned on an opinion, question her on that opinion. If she deserves to be called on her bullshit, call her on her bullshit. And then finally, I want you to actively put her in a position of selling herself, and this means challenging her and asking her qualifying questions. So the most classic qualifying question of all time comes from old school game theory circa 2002 to 2004, and the question was, okay, you're cute, but what do you have going for you besides your appearance that'd make me want to get to know you better? Now, I don't actually suggest using this question overtly because it is very overtly gamey, and because if you use it at the wrong time, you're likely to get a lot of negative answers like, oh, I don't know, you approached me, why don't you tell me? Or I don't know, I'm boring, or something like that. But this philosophy, the philosophy, yes, you're attractive, but what else do you have going for you, is exactly the way I want you to be thinking. You walked up to the girl because she was attractive or interesting enough to get your attention, but that only got her in the door. Now, what does she have going for her besides that? Because there are millions and millions, if not tens of millions or hundreds of millions of other very attractive women in the world who you could talk to, meet, and date. So what sets this one girl apart besides just her appearance? Because again, there are lots of beautiful girls in the world. This is the philosophy I want you to have, and I want you to start actively screening. A good shortcut for this, think about in general, not even with the specific girl, but in general ahead of time, what are the types of things you generally want a woman to be besides her looks? And then you can start asking questions around these things. So if, for example, you want a girl to be spontaneous and adventurous, qualify, test, challenge this girl on whether she's that thing. If you want a girl to be educated, challenge her on whether she reads books or whether she's intellectually curious. If you want a girl to travel with, challenge her on whether she has a job that allows travel. And the specific qualifiers and whether she meets them are very useful, but almost more important is the very fact that you cared to qualify, the very fact you had standards. That is to say, having standards matters more than what even the particular standards are. It's just critical that you show the ability to screen a girl, the ability to not be won over a girl just because she's hot. Because you know who isn't won over by girls just because they're hot? Guys who date hot girls. Okay, so now that you understand the steps, let's put it all together. Step one, what do you need to do? You need to get the girl's attention. You need a window of opportunity where you can have a real interaction with her so that your buyer-seller frame and your best self can come through. Once you have her attention, you need to screen and qualify, and very importantly, you need to not sell yourself to her, right? She needs to be the one selling herself to you as opposed to you being the one selling yourself to her. And by the way, a side note on this, if you do adopt a buyer-seller frame and she's not used to it, you may get what are called shit tests. She may resist that frame. And you know what? If that happens, that's actually a good thing, because when you pass shit tests, when you hold your frame, you're actually building even more value. So again, step one, get on her radar. Step two, establish the buyer-seller frame, pass shit tests, and do frame control techniques if you need to in order to keep that frame. And then once you've done that, you will have a girl who is selling herself to you, qualifying herself to you, and now you have a window to convey your real value. You have a window to get to know her on that genuine level, and you're no longer in the realm of superficial value, you're in the realm of real value, and you're now interacting as equals or even with an advantage so that you can get the girls you deserve. One final side note. Everything I've talked about in this video will help you to attract the most desirable girls. However, if you want to actually keep them, it comes all the way back to the start, which is becoming that high value guy, living a life you want to live, being a good boyfriend, essentially, right? You can think of a lot of game and meeting girls as the job interview phase, and then you can think of being a boyfriend as performing the job. So all of the things I talked about in this video is designed to level the playing field and get you into a relationship with the types of girls you deserve. But it's up to you to work on yourself, work on your life in such a way that you actually deserve them and that you actually perform as a boyfriend once you're there. So keep that in mind as well. Final note for this video. The things I'm teaching you here are incredibly powerful, but they do take some practice and experience. When you first start implementing them, you will see you get bigger reactions from girls, you do get on their radar, but you may have some trouble with shit tests, or you may have trouble holding the frame once you get there. That's all progress and it's okay. You will get better and better with this. And the good news is, as you're implementing it, you will start to get girls who are a little out of your league, then a little more, then a little more. So it is a process, but you should see some results immediately as well. So that's the video, but don't just watch it. Go out, get off your ass, go put it in practice, and I'll see you on the next one.